A few episodes back, I talked about how to discover God's purpose for your life. Today, I'm looking at God's role and our role in succeeding in that purpose. Welcome to Reading Between the Lines. Let me start first by reading some verses from the Bible. Genesis 17, verses 1 through 2 from the New American Standard. I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. God was speaking to Abraham in those verses, and definitely he promised Abraham a son, right? Abraham had to wait 20 some years before that panned out. But he waited in faith and he believed that God would do exactly what he said he would do. God said, I will. If he says it, he has to do it. He had a purpose for Abraham. He had a purpose for Moses as well. But Moses had to step into that purpose. And he was pretty darn reluctant. If you're familiar with the story, Moses protested at least 4 times that I counted. His last protest was, quote, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. God answered him in Exodus 4, verses 11 and 12. Let me read those to you. Then the Lord asked Moses, who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. Wow. I mean, God answered Moses's objection. It's like he couldn't speak very well, but who made a mouth? Who made the eyes? Who made the ears? God did. And God was perfectly able to make Moses's words come out clearly. But you know what? Yeah, Moses still protested. So I guess that would be the 5th time because he said, please send someone else. And at that point, God got angry. Okay. Yeah, that's not something I want to do is make God angry. But God said, okay, well, use your brother as a mouthpiece. But Moses was still the leader. And God was with them, just as God was with Abraham to fulfill Abraham's destiny, and he was with Moses and Aaron and fulfilled that destiny. The Old Testament is filled with examples of men and women that God led as they fulfilled his purpose in their lives. There's Joshua, Deborah, the judge, there's Gideon and Esther, Elijah, and all the prophets. So many people in the Old Testament that God was with every step of the way as that person stepped into the purpose that God had for their lives. God has a purpose for you and for me, and he's more invested in the success of that purpose than we are. Well, we can't sit back on the couch munching chips and dip as much as we might like to and binge watching Hallmark Christmas movies or our favorite TV show and expect things to just magically happen. It just doesn't work that way. The parable of the talents gives us a perfect example of how God works. The master was going on a trip. He gave three of his servants a bag of money. The amount of money was based on each servant's ability. When the master would return, he expected each servant to have increased the amount that he gave them. 2 of them did, and 1 didn't. And he was very upset with the man who didn't. God has given each of us abilities and skills, and He's filled us with the desire for His purpose in life. The experiences that we've gone through from childhood all the way through adulthood, they've built skills within us. They've given us experiences that we need in order to fulfill the purpose that God has for our lives. What we still lack, God will help us learn. The key is that we have to make the decision to actually step into that purpose. Moses could have completely turned away from that burning bush and refused to do what God asked him to do. God would have found someone else. We have that same choice. We can choose not to fulfill the purpose that God has for us. How happy we'll be in life, that I can't speak to, because it's not a choice that I've made for my own life. I want to fulfill the purpose that God has for my life. He filled me with a desire to do that. So doing anything else for me just doesn't seem like it would be a pleasing or happy life, because I would be doing something that I truly don't like doing. But we do have that choice, and I want you to know that you have that choice. You do not have to embrace the purpose that God has for you, but I can tell you that you will have the most magnificent, adventurous life if you do embrace His purpose. Once we make the decision, that's all we have to do is make the decision. Yes, I will fulfill this purpose in my life, God. Then He is going to bring us the how. He is going to lead us every step of the way to fulfill that purpose. We are destined to succeed. God put us on this earth with a purpose. He wants to see that purpose fulfilled, which is why He's more invested in it than we are, because it's His plan. He wants us to succeed. So He is there to help us in every way possible. Make that decision, and day by day, listen for God's voice. What's my next step, God? What's my next step? And when He gives you that step, be obedient to do it. Because if you don't, He's not going to give you any more steps until you fulfill the one He's already given you. Joshua, study Joshua. The book of Joshua is a wonderful book in the Bible, probably one of my favorites, next to John. All along the way, God gave Joshua the battle plans. He said, here's what you need to do. First, cross the river, and here's what you have to do in order to cross the river. The Jordan River was at flood stage at that point in the year. The priests had to carry the ark, and they had to step into the water first before God stopped the flow of the water. Once they got across, God continually gave Joshua the battle plans for conquering the cities that needed to be conquered. I'm sure that you're all familiar with the story of Jericho and the way the Israelites marched around it every day for 7 days, and then the walls fell, right? God will do the same thing for you. You just need to make the decision.